tell me a little bit about who you are and how you first connected with Equip.
I am currently I'm serving as the Dean of Spiritual Formation at Abilene Christian University and the campus chaplain. And in some ways, being here in this role is just an act and a grace of God. I connected with Equip through friendship, but just I was already working in college ministry and was told about Equip and had connections to Peter and those who were involved in helping start and lead Equip. But what really pulled me in was that they were trying to do what I hadn't seen anyone do well. And so that led to some small group, just how can we provide a space for those experiencing same-sex attraction to really be in community and wrestle with their commitments and convictions to traditional sexual ethic, because there weren't any spaces like that either. In my world in college ministry at my former institution, and a connection to Equip really allowed for a quick partnership of knowing that we were missing a lot in serving these students. We were missing a lot in leading the community of faith at large. And I think a quick and natural friendship formed that allowed us to work alongside Equip that helped us meet the needs of specific students.
Tell me a little bit more about maybe what other elements of partnering with Equip looked like. So we led that kind of a support group or community group.
For my area of leadership, it turned into a conversation series that we did through chapel. I laugh a little bit at the name. I don't know if this will stay, but we called it SNL and Sex and Lies, and we really tried to tackle a lot of the myths that we have about sexuality and dating relationships and marriage and singleness. Wow. It's kind of a 3-part series, and that was something where working with Equip and Peter and doing chapel and campus ministry, where we would take turns leading some parts of conversations, but also leading students into healthy dialogue. And that was kind of the goal was, hey, let's model how we can name the disconnects that we're feeling, begin to model healthy conversation in a culture that doesn't like to talk about it at all. And I feel like the responses and the participation in those events were really fantastic. One of the things that we can often do in ministry, or when we see a need, is we can go from one side to the other, and we have this really reactionary ministry of, hey, no one's talking about same-sex attraction or same-sex relationships, and we focus on a small fragment of the sexuality conversation. And we don't focus on purity, we don't focus on singleness, we don't focus on dating and marriage, we don't focus on how all of it fits. And so that was really something that conversation series, SNL, I think brought to some of our students, but really even helped me in beginning to lead those conversations well. So both in preparing and partnering with Equip and working with Peter on that was very helpful for me in my role. Equip came in and supported student life and did 3 or 4-part training that I know at the very least continued to encourage me that there are people who are pioneering the way forward in this conversation. Equip did a really good job of bringing front and center in a very humble way some of the very human aspects of this conversation, that this isn't something to be afraid of. It's not something that should be ignored, but in kind of our discomfort of approaching it, there is a lot of benefits and fruit on the other side of that. I would say, this isn't just around sex and sexuality, but a lot of people just don't realize that in their apathy, they are against something. And so I think Equip helped open up eyes to an unintentional oversight or a passivity that had led to apathy. And I like to say this is that when the closer you get to problems that we deem as problems or issues, and you see the people who are affected by those problems or issues, or who are immersed in it, it no longer becomes a problem to be solved, but rather people that should be loved. I think that would be how I would kind of describe my whole experience since meeting Equip.
What's been most powerful, helpful about the training and support that Equip has provided? I mean, you shared a lot of encouraging things already, but if there's one element, one aspect of the way we partnered together that was most powerful, what would you say that was?
One thing that comes to mind really quickly is the relational security that comes with wrestling with this conversation with Equip.
Mm.
And I mean that you can't wrestle with the toughest conversations without having somebody who is either affected by it or this is their experience.
Wow.
You need to have an expert in the area who can really speak into some of the things. One of the things that Equip has done for me in my areas of ministry is help provide the security that comes through dealing with this in a relational and a communal way.
Wow.
They were very relational and communal with me, and I think through the training that we did with my colleagues and coworkers, they came in, and even in somewhat being visitors and experts that came to us, I think they still allowed and helped us to be ignorant together. And they normalized what we all don't know, or an experience that we all don't have. And they were really able to help act as a third party, as kind of maybe a mediator is the right word, for providing that foundational security of relationship.
So at what moment do you feel like the importance of this work at your ministry clicked?
A recent reminder was just how unsafe our communities of faith have been for anyone who wants to wrestle with their story and their experience with same-sex attraction, with past experiences, with beliefs around their theology of sexuality, and their uncertainty and their doubt and their questioning. You name it. We have not created safe spaces within our communities of faith, especially the ones that I believe are trying to be faithful to Scripture, not realizing that in some way is holding them back from being really active in the lives of those that are experiencing something that many cannot relate to on that level or in the same way. I think we can all relate to brokenness within our sexuality, but we have done a terrible job of, in some ways, decriminalizing
Sure. Yeah.
this one conversation within sexuality around same-sex attraction, same-sex relations, same-sex romance, and we have created such a gap towards our brothers and sisters who have valid questions, valid experiences, and not a safe place to wrestle among communities of faith. And so I think that every time that moment happens with me, where somebody tells you this very secret and hurting part of their life, and they are no longer welcome and they no longer feel safe, I think we are doing a terrible service to them. We're not really testifying to the ways in which everyone should always feel confident in approaching Jesus in the means of grace. There are all of those conversations that are important, but they're not the things that need to be handled first and foremost. There wasn't anybody who wasn't welcome at Jesus's feet when they came to them with this deep desire in their heart for healing, for knowledge, for understanding, for intimacy and nearness with him. It was often those who had it all figured out that didn't realize how far they were keeping themselves from Jesus.
And on the topic of stories and doing one-on-one ministry, would you share about a way that a one-on-one ministry time when you were able to use some of the training you got with Equip to better minister to a gay person, parents of gay people, or friends of gay people. A lot of this is we're trying to share stories with some of the people who have been supporting Equip of what's the downstream effects of the trainings we're doing at churches and campus ministries and whatnot.
Just most recently, the same student I've referred to has just been very, it's been very life-giving for me to find friendship and brotherhood with one of my own students. And my compassion has deepened in this process, but the things that I learned from Equip were or gleaned in relationship with walking with others who have this shared experience, and the support of Equip is, for lack of a better word, being absolutely normal with friendship and with brotherhood. And I say that the question came from this journey where he has opened up to a few other individuals in the last couple of months, and they have kind of come back to him with the question of, hey, how do you want us to behave around you? And that brought me back to conversations with Equip, where we can normalize friendship, we can normalize brotherhood. There's no need to treat them differently. And as simple as that seems, like it's an important thing for people to know and understand is to treat them differently than you would any other friend or brother is to remind them that something's wrong. You belong just as much as anyone else. Your struggles, while may manifest differently, are no different, worse, or more challenging than others. You know, that might be open for interpretation, but what I mean is giving life to and speaking into their humanity, their worthiness of loving and being loved, and not making it a special circumstance is something that I learned and grew in learning by working with Equip and by doing small groups with Equip.
So what advice would you have for pastors, for ministers who want to better minister to gay people in the church?
My encouragement would be really give yourself over to the process of self-educating. And that isn't like an attempt to become the expert, but rather to become understanding and empathetic. Self-educating, pursuing relationship with those that this is their story has just really shaped me into a more empathetic person and leader. And it has made this conversation more important. And I continue to dive into the books and the teachings and the next tool that is going to help us serve this demographic better.
For the person who had their job 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times before them, or we're in a place to do this work of ministering to gay people better, but they didn't, for whatever the reasons were, right? They kicked the can down the road a little bit, right? And the pain of that gap in that community of faith only built over that time. So you're the minister, you're the pastor, and you feel like something needs to be done, but you're realizing if you do something, you're gonna have to not only deal with what's happened as you've been a leader, but what's happened 40 years while others have been a leader, right? And you're gonna have to undo the work and deal with the damage of many, many decades. It's not your responsibility, and that can be pretty overwhelming. That can be a big barrier to saying, hey, I didn't bring us to this point, and I shouldn't have to be the one to kind of labor and suffer to change it. What advice do you have to a pastor who finds himself in that space?
I think my advice would be it kind of fits in the realm of any of the biggest problems in the world. It's easy to be overwhelmed by how complex, how complicated, or how big they are, and just kind of give yourself over to the next thing that is manageable. In this conversation, it fits in line with, hey, maybe you're not called to global missions. Maybe you're not called to ending modern day slavery. Maybe you're not called to being an expert in the areas of human sexuality, but we are all called to care.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a posture that I would advise anyone, and especially in this realm, is you don't have to order your whole life around figuring out how to serve this demographic, but you do need to make space in your life to not be ignorant, to be more understanding and empathetic, and to give yourself grace in the process of, hey, this is something that's going to take time. Let's just allow this to be a tough and complex issue, but give it the importance that it deserves our attention and our care. Yeah. And so I think this is something just like any other charge or mission or ministry from the Lord. I don't think he sends us out solo. And I think I've seen Equip grow in that as they are growing as a team and as a community, and they're doing this in partnership and in relationship. Even they're not doing it alone. But I think that's something that we often forget, is we don't have to be alone on this journey. So yeah, I think that's the last thing I would add.
Well, thank you for your time.
Oh, you're very welcome, Peter. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, me too.